What's going on, Flicks Talkers? Welcome back to another movie review. This time for the Netflix film, Da 5 Bloods. It is the newest Spike Lee joint, and it did come out June 12th, 2020. It has a runtime of 2 hours and 34 minutes, and it is rated R. Now, before we get into everything, guys, this is a spoiler-free review, so no worries. I'm going to try to go over everything as vaguely as I can, just some of my likes and dislikes for this film. Now, if you guys can, before we get into the review, please make sure you guys hit that thumbs up as well as that subscribe and bell notification if you do appreciate content like this. All right, so let's get into the quick synopsis for Da 5 Bloods. 4 African-American vets battle the forces of man and nature when they return to Vietnam, seeking the remains of their fallen squad leader and the gold fortune he helped them hide. All right, guys, so before we get into this cast, let me tell you what I thought of this overall premise. Now, I like that they kind of go back, and there's a lot of flashbacks in this movie, so sometimes the trailers can be misleading, guys. So if you're looking for a war Vietnam story, I mean, you do get that in a lot of the flashbacks, but we're kind of flashing forward to present day where these guys are in their 60s, I believe, and it does kind of follow the characters themselves, a lot of the mannerisms that go along with that, as well as the lingo that was big in the 70s. So I thought that was cool that they still use that to this day, you know, in 2020. And it's just them kind of going back to Vietnam, of course, to try to retrieve this gold that they did bury with their friend, their blood, Chadwick Boseman, who we don't get to see too much in this movie. Now, I know he's kind of in the forefront as far as the trailer because he does have that star power that these older OGs possess. So it's kind of cool that they do show that balance of young and the older cast because I really appreciated it. Even though I haven't seen, you know, Delroy Lindo or Clark Peters or Norm Lewis for that matter, any of their older works too much. I mean, probably Delroy Lindo was the one that stood out as far as me knowing a lot of his previous works, as well as him working a lot with Spike Lee, just like Clark Peters as well. So it's cool that you get this Quentin Tarantino factor, and I hate to compare the two because Spike Lee kind of has expressed that he doesn't really care for Quentin Tarantino's line of work, but that's for a whole nother video. But I like to compare the two because one main thing that I really do love about their directed films or written films is the attention to detail and in-depth with these characters that they can get. And that's what you get in this over 2 hour and 30-minute movie, guys. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are looking at that runtime and saying, this isn't a Marvel movie. How am I going to invest that much time? And that was kind of the reason for me kind of holding off a little bit, you know, a week or so. But I'm so glad I really dedicated my time to sit down and actually watch this film through and through, guys. Spike Lee is one of my favorite directors, definitely in my top 10. There's a lot of movies that he has put out that are kind of bottom tier as far as his resume and catalog go, but I'll let it be known right here, right out the gate, that this is one of the top tier movies as far as the overall picture. So before I get into all of my likes, let's jump into this cast. So like I said before, guys, you have Delroy Lindo as Paul, you have Jonathan Majors as his son David, you have Clark Peters as Otis, Norman Lewis as Eddie, and Isaiah Whitlock Jr. as Melvin. Excluding the character of David because he is the son, but he does become, you know, part of this 5 Bloods, so it could be technically the 6 Bloods, but, you know, we're going to focus on the 5. So what did I think of them? So I'm going to say right off the bat, Delroy Lindo outshined all of their performances, and not because mainly he got a lot of camera time in this. There is a lot of Spike Lee close-up shots and a lot of you know, kind of direct dialogue to the audience that he gives in this, so we understand the main focus and almost like an antagonist of this film, you know, is Delroy Lindo's character as Paul, and he's very conflicted. You know, they kind of go into his political beliefs. He has a certain hat that I won't mention that is a conflict of the group, as well as, you know, a conflict of this country right now. So there is a lot of subject material, you know, as well as they touch on BLM. They touch a lot about racial discrimination. They touch on a lot of things that are going on today. I mean, they've been going on forever, but they've been talked about more recently today in the news, just kind of out when you're out and about. And that's kind of the thing that I did like about this movie, is that they do touch on these subject materials, but it's not really in a preachy way. It's just kind of brought up, you know, amongst these friends friends amongst these guys that went through a lot of hell. They went through the Vietnam War. So them kind of revisiting this, as well as addressing issues like anxiety, which they don't talk about too much in the African American community as far as film goes. I haven't seen that touched on too much, as well as PTSD from a lot of these Army guys. So I think that's extremely pivotal, especially when you're dealing with a war movie like this. So a lot of people are going into this not really knowing what to expect. Is it a war movie? Is it a crime movie? Is it a dramatic movie? Is it an action movie? It's all of the above. And I think that's what kind of held my interest through this 2-hour and 34-minute journey. Now, saying all that about Delroy Lindo, that's not to discredit anybody else. I'm just saying that I believe his performances, especially towards the end, were amazing, breathtaking almost, and it brought real tears to my eyes because I felt the emotion. He's someone that you can tell is well seasoned as well as the other guys, but I think it's just the writing, the dialogue, his character nature. It just kind of just hit me on all emotional levels, and Spike really nailed it. Now, along with our main cast, guys, we do have some side characters. So like Paul Walter Hauser, you saw him in Black Klansman. He was in I, Tonya. He also was in Richard Jewell last year. So this guy's kind of on his way. I think he's a really good side character. In Richard Jewell, he was the main focus. So he's kind of finding his balance of where to kind of put him. I think he plays the background as well as he does the foreground. So we didn't get to see him too much, but he was a cool side character that I did recognize. And he is a little pivotal kind of to the plot towards the middle of the movie. And he does help out the Five Bloods. As well as Frenchman Jean Reno. You know him as the professional, Leon the Professional, and I thought he was a cool character, a little cameo, if you will, at the beginning and kind of towards the end of this movie. So there is some things that I kind of predicted would happen, and that kind of jumps to my dislike. So I'll just kind of go into that. Is some of the scenes that did play out or in the plot kind of were a little predictable. I knew where this was heading, but like I said, there was so much going on in the screen, more character development. It really held my interest. I didn't really care that I knew that this was coming. That might have been the only dislike, if any, that I had with the movie. Now, going back to the storytelling, guys, is the attention to detail and Spike Lee's style itself. So when they're talking about a historical time in history, you know, they'll show that in a vintage news clip on the screen, or if they're actually looking at a photo of something and we kind of see it a little bit off screen, or we see the back end of it, you can't really see it. You know, Spike will flash that on the screen. I think that's a really subtle detail that people forget about his style making, is the attention to, hey, this is my craft, this is my style, this is a Spike Lee joint that you're watching, and I actually really appreciated it. And that kind of jumps, especially towards the end of the movie. We get to see stills and frames of these characters, especially the Five Bloods when they were younger, to a point, to an extent where you think these fictional characters are actual people that existed in history. I mean, technically they were. There was a lot of African Americans in Vietnam, but these specific characters, you kind of feel once you watch this movie and the style that they filmed this at, that these people did exist in history at one time. Now, jumping over to the music and the score, which was a character in itself, guys, I thought this was an amazing balance of orchestra as well as a lot of Motown oldies with the acapella from Marvin Gaye. You get so many cool Motown oldies kind of thrown in there that really set the pace, that set the mood, evoked a lot of emotions, especially for that time in the late 60s, early 70s. That were timeless. I mean, if you guys are fans and aficionados of music, you can't neglect that music from that era. And going back to the attention to detail, guys, I thought it was cool during the flashback scenes that we went from widescreen to current day to 4:3 aspect ratio to the flashbacks, as well as like some grainy filters that were on there to kind of, you know, show that it was in the late 60s, early 70s of the Vietnam War. Now, last but not least, guys, Chadwick Boseman as Stormin Norman. What did I think of his character? When they showed him on screen, I thought he was awesome. He was definitely a leader in this role. We know him from 42, the Jackie Robinson story. We know him from all the Avengers movies, the Black Panther films, 21 Bridges. To me, he's still wet behind the ears. I know he's had a lot of, work in his resume, but as far as being in the forefront, the main guy, and in this one, he is a side, kind of a I guess you would call him a side character. He's not the focal point of this movie. I thought he did a really, really good job when they showed him on screen. Now, I hear a lot of people saying, this movie is preachy, and it was put out, of course, during these times of protest and the BLM movement. And I gotta say that I did not get 100%, thrown in your face preachy vibes. Of course, they do recognize a lot of things that are going on in 2020. I mean, how can you not? It's pivotal to the subject material. If you I think, took that away, it wouldn't be as realistic as it was. And I kind of appreciate the nice balance that we got from that. I mean, Spike Lee himself is known for a lot of racial subject material in his movies, so you kind of got to know that going into watching these films. And one thing I forgot to touch on, guys, are the action sequences in this film. If you guys are fans of war or war cinematography, just as far as everything's laid out as far as realism, I thought these shots were pretty real. So we get spurts here and there with either flashbacks or current things that are happening, shootouts and whatnot. And even though they're only about 4 or 5 minutes long, the impact of them was great. I really had a good time as far as everything just looking like they were in the trenches, like they were really engaging in battle. And even though they are older guys, they held their own weight either with the knife play or the gunfights, and I really enjoyed it. So I think all of this that I covered, guys, I know it's a little more lengthier than my other movie reviews, but there is a lot to kind of talk about in this 2-hour, 34-minute movie. Once again, don't let that runtime deter you. I think that you guys are going to enjoy this if you guys appreciate this subject material. So that being said, guys, I'm going to give The Five Bloods a solid 4 out of 5, saying this is definitely one of the higher ones up in the Spike Lee joints. All right, guys, have you seen The Five Bloods? Let me know in the comments below. And if you guys did appreciate my review, please give me a thumbs up and make sure you guys hit that subscribe and bell notification for more movie and movie news content like this. Till next time, guys, I'm gone. Peace.